Hey everybody, it's that time again. It's Mule and Donkey time. We come together every Tuesday to talk about mules and donkeys. Today is no exception. My name is Dave. This is Steve Edwards. And today we have our friend Ron Denn. Well, Steve's friend. They've known each other for years. And we're going to get to hear a little bit about their friendship, about mule stories from across the United States. And we're real excited about that. But if this is your first time ever hanging out, I do want to say welcome. Usually these broadcasts are done live, meaning I could hold up a newspaper of the day and I could say, hey, today is, and you'd see the date and we'd take calls back and forth. But today it's a very special one having Ron. And so we're recording it so that we get everything, all the technical glitches and everything worked out so we can give you a very nice program. The way this program works is there's really only three things we ask. Number one, that right now in the comment section, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, you put your name, where you're watching from, and what the weather is like today. Steve and Ron and I can get together anytime and we can just shoot the breeze and talk shop. But we're here today to share stories for your benefit. And so while we're not live today and we can't say hello, we do want to know that you're watching, and we'll be going back through and we'll be taking a look at the comments from the show. So your name, where you're watching from, what the weather is like. The second thing is that you share any and every mule or donkey question that you got. Now it's going to be different because we don't see them coming in live, but I'm going to go back through. I'm going to get the questions, and the next live program, Steve and I are going to go through them. So if you're listening today and you think, oh my gosh, I want to know more about that, go ahead and ask. No dumb questions, no questions that have been asked too many times. No questions are off limits. Matter of fact, we have some folks who will say, hey, I don't agree, Steve, and then we'll talk about that. We're not afraid of anything. We're going to give you the information, and then we're going to let you loose, go out there and apply it yourself. Third thing, and y'all have done so good with this, is to share the broadcast. Share it out on Facebook or YouTube so your friends and your family who are into equine can know to come and find us and hopefully get some answers too. With that, Steve, how have things been since our last broadcast?
Oh boy, I've been going like 90 miles an hour. You know, tomorrow morning we head up to Grand Canyon area, and I've been going 9-0, trying to load the truck, load the trailer, and make sure we got things together. But it's great to be able to take a couple minutes here and spend time and visit with a very, very good friend of mine, Ron Denn.
How about that? Yeah, why don't you introduce Ron? Tell us how y'all know each other, and then we can get into some good conversation.
You know, we know each other because of the mutual thing that we have called Mules and Donkeys. And I don't really remember how we really got together. Maybe Ron can remember, but it's been at least 15 years. And he's done all kinds of things when it comes to ranching and farming and hunting and guiding and packing. He's just all around knowledgeable guy. It's amazing. He was in Montana, and then his dad needed help in Minnesota at his ranch, his farm there. And then his dad passed away, and somebody come along and said, we want to buy your farm. And Ron says, that's okay. I want to move to Montana. Now I'm giving you the short version of it. So that's how this ended up. But while we were in Minnesota, Ron and I got to be very, very good friends, closer than family. And I got to know his family stuff really good. I called his daughter my granddaughter, because I'm a little older than Ron, not much. Anyway, so anyway, we fished together and this sort of thing, which was great. But most of all, we spent time with mules and donkeys. And Ron has been the president of the Mule and Donkey Association there in Minnesota. But he also started the first Mule and Donkey program, or as part of it, in Montana. But he also took that knowledge and was in Minnesota and started a Mule and Donkey show there as well. So he's got all kinds of knowledge when it comes down to putting together shows, and he put together clinics for me. And he's an all-around guy. But just like everything else, we can learn from each other.
Yeah.
And Ron was doing some of the same things, and that they had learned about and known about for years. And then I started showing him some different things about bidding, about the come along hitch, about shoeing, about mules in general, and kind of refined him a little bit. So that's kind of the overview of Ron Denn and I. I'm sure he could give us a few more details, but Ron, how's things up there in Montana?
It's hot today. We got forest fires all over the place, just not here, thank goodness. But anyway, they're predicting rain, so let's pray that we get it and these fires subside. Otherwise, thanks for having me on the show, and good seeing you again. And I guess to start out, I don't even remember what year it was that we met. You were working a clinic in St. Cloud, Minnesota, I think it was.
Ah,
And
might have been.
I believe, I don't remember what year that was, but it was in the early 2000s.
Can you believe that we're doing these clinics now on the internet, Ron? Isn't that incredible?
It's unbelievable. Yeah, the technology, it's pretty hard for me to keep up with it anymore.
Steve, what did you observe up there, spending time with Ron? And you did the clinic up there, of course. What did you observe, and what are some of the things we'd like to talk about here today?
Well, one of the things that we've got to remember this when Ron and I first started getting together, it happened to be it was most likely during the Minnesota Expo, which is a major expo, and I usually am training for an hour or two at a time throughout the day, throughout a weekend of an expo, which expos I really love because I'm able to really reach out to a lot of people. It's kind of like this program here. I'm reaching out people all over the world thanks to you, Dave, and your abilities of being able to communicate with people with this thing. But that's kind of how it happened. And then I always teach by the teachable moment, So when somebody would say something, I would say, "Yeah, that's right. Your cinch is about right, but here's the problem: you got your saddle in the wrong place." And so, folks, I started getting them to key in on just like Ron. He had places, he had equipment and this sort of thing that he had learned from years, like this saddle company. But with the mule and donkeys, I learned a little bit different thing from that mule and donkey. So I say, okay, move the saddle to here, do this. And then I would leave him alone. But then pretty soon Ron started saying, now, Steve, I'm still not quite getting everything right. Ron could see that, once he started seeing what was going on. Well, let's try your saddles. And then he started seeing how my saddle started making the difference in his mules and his donkeys. And then since he was so well known being the president and stuff, when we started doing clinics there at the fairgrounds, then wow, people started seeing it. And I would do the clinics, and then he'd also did the mule shows. And one of the things that was interesting, I'm going to kind of run ahead really quick. That there was a dentist there that was coming there doing dental work, and he said, "I'm amazed, Steve. I'm looking at all these mules in this show, and all these mules have your saddles but two, and all the ones that are doing really well have your saddles, but the two are having problems." He says, "I would have never guessed it." And so then, Ron, being the teacher that he is and the helper that he is, he helped a lot of people in Minnesota during these clinics. And with bidding, it started showing him things, and it improved his abilities. And we just went on from there. But gosh, it's got to be at least 15 years, huh, Ron? Maybe longer.
Oh, yes, it's got to be at least that. I don't remember the date. I'm sorry. I just don't. But it's been a long time. A lot of fishing trips, a lot of mule talk.
Yeah. Tell me some of the things that you've learned as you've been going along here, and some of the things that you kind of learned from me, and then kind of evolved some of your training program.
Well, one of the biggest things I learned, and you taught me right off from the start, I'm heavy-handed. I'm a typical guy, and I notice that. And now that I'm doing some teaching, I'm learning guys just typically are heavy-handed. And once you learn to finesse and not be so rough with those animals, you'd be surprised how fast the results improve. Saddling your saddles, I just can't speak enough about them. I've owned a lot of them. Your techniques, your ideas, your thoughts, your teaching, I just really appreciate, and it's brought me light years forward from where I was.
Uh,
There's just not that knowledge available out there from most people.
you know.
So I appreciate that very much.
Do you think that come along hitch kind of helped your hands a little bit?
Yes, it does. It also refines your communication skills. It's all about learning how to talk mule. It ain't the mule's job to learn how to talk people, and
Yeah.
it really, really brings you forward fast with the come along hitch. Those people who haven't tried it really need to experience that, and it just makes your mule much more soft and supple and easier to work with.
Yeah, that's one thing I've learned a long time ago, and I'm sure you see it now, that it's not the bit that really starts building a foundation. It comes from the nose itself. And the proof of that is in the come along hitch. And, like the last clinic we did up at your ranch. Now, folks, I got to tell you, if you ever get a chance and you want to go to Montana and you want to experience a beautiful ranch, beautiful country, and a really laid back situation, we're going to give you that information later on at the end of this little show, because Ron is one of few ranchers in Montana that kind of opens up his ranch and say, "Come on in here. I've got a cabin. I've got tents. I've got camping, things like this." And the funny stuff that you're smelling around there is called fresh air. Yeah, and you'll see beauty. You'll see deer, animals of all kinds, but most of all, you'll have it to yourself, and that's kind of cool because you've got some the amenities there, but yet you'll have a lot to yourself. But we'll get back into that part later. So, Ron, this last clinic we did for you, not we did for ourselves and this sort of thing. There was a lot going on there. What do we have? Like 10 animals, and their owners, and then the spectators. What did you see at that clinic that kind of give you some insight?
There was a lot of, how do you word this? The devil's in the details, right?
Yeah.
And it's not about just this overwhelming experience. It's all the little details, like how you use the twitch. I never would have dreamt that that was the correct and proper procedure of using a twitch. And I've owned one for how many years? But what you could do with that was just unbelievable. I got a really severe ear shy mule, Steve, and some of the techniques and showing me how to get the mule past that. He's doing quite well now. But what I really appreciated was really emphasis on controlling them feet. That was really important, that I needed to review that. But it's just a general improvement of all the mule owners. It's overwhelming. It's just, I'm in awe after several days.
Yeah.
It's really impressive. So I
Isn't
thank
it?
you for that.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I appreciate that comment. Isn't it unique, though? Isn't it kind of fun? Because I don't just sit on top of somebody. I say, here it is. This is what you should be doing, and let them go and let them make mistakes. And that's what's really important, folks. You have to understand, if people say they don't want to make mistakes, you will make mistakes. I wish I could tell you that all of my techniques are right on the money good. I'm always learning more. But just like here, we got Ron. And I want to say this again. We got a man with a lot of experience. He's gone to packing school. He's farmed. He's ranched. It's not just somebody that just decided they're going to have their first animal. Ron has been there, done that. Like you said, he packed and guided for 9 years in Montana. That's nothing easy about that. That is tough. You got animals to deal with. You have people to deal with. But I want to say it this way here. That Ron still left room on his plate to learn more. Okay, and didn't just say, "Nah, my way is it." And I respect that with Ron and other people like him. But Ron can also see not just improvement on himself, but just like in Minnesota when we did clinics, people that he's known for years. Tell us about that, Ron. Some of the differences that you've seen.
Oh yeah, it's after a few clinics and they see actually apply some of your not only uh, saddles and a lot of your techniques. They're just go to shows and clean up. I mean, it's unbelievable the changes that I have seen over the years. You know, when I first started guiding, you always figured those mules, they're going to get you. You know, they were just kind of, we used to call them snaky. But the quality, the breeding, the genetics, the desire to get this refined animal, it's unbelievable how the mule industry has changed so much. It's just a kind of a privilege to see it and experience it. Uh, it- you know, going to some of your foundation training to using the martingale bidding, all this is just really helpful. I think, of course, everybody's got their own style, but building the foundation is the most important.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and you do that with the mules and people, so it's great. It's really good.
Well, it's fun to see the people make the changes. And then when they make changes, just a simple matter of moving your hand, like you said, the heavy handedness, simple matter of moving your hand, how it makes such a difference to the mind of that mule, and how you could take 1,000 pounds with just a little bit of touch of your hand on that come along rope, and it makes such a difference in their minds. Did you learn anything? You were talking about the twitch. Kind of tell us what you saw there in that twitch when I was teaching on that.
It was quite remarkable. You got this animal, and obviously the adrenaline is going a little bit in you and your mule or donkey or whatever it may be. But the release of the endorphins with the way you pump the twitch was just remarkable. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to try it with my hand once and just see the response. And after you've used the twitch a few times, all you have to do is grab that mule's nose and pump it with your hand. And you almost, not quite, but you almost get the same response. They just almost crave it after a while and they relax and it's easier for them to work with. I really liked seeing that. The truth of the matter, I hope more people um, continue forward with that because if you don't need to use drugs on your animal, why would you want to? When it's something just this simple of a technique works. Not for everything, but for some of the more simple situations, uh, you don't need to go any farther once you learn how to do it.
Yeah.
Even the farriers that have been shoeing for years and years, you show them that and they're just in awe over it.
We had a veterinarian there. She came all the way from Washington with her sister, and you could kind of see it in her eyes. There was some. I wonder what's going to happen here next. And then when she saw me use that twitch and saw how I was making that mule so relaxed, and then I told her, I said, I've stitched and I've castrated a little bit of everything doing this. And she says, I've seen the twitch before, but people always just squeezed it and held onto it. Didn't think about creating natural endorphins. And that's exactly what you do. You open and close your hand, and that twitch is on the nose, and it just makes them quiet and relaxed. Isn't it amazing how their head was dropping, their eyes get all big and brown?
Hmm. Yes, it was. Yeah, they just relax, lower their head. You're exactly right.
Yeah,
Um, it was kind of impressive to see how it's supposed to be done.
yeah, yeah.
That there's tricks to everything, and it's nice to learn a few of them. It's a
Yep.
real nice tool to have in the toolbox.
Especially when you got one that you've got a shoe and that's being a problem with the back foot, or you've got to do some dental work or some vet work and this sort of thing. That twitch really is just makes these mules and donkeys happy. Uh, One of the things I've learned from a lot of these veterinarians, and as I've talked to them and this sort of thing, they're used to using drugs. Okay, that's what they teach in veterinarian school and this sort of thing. But when I taught how to use that twitch, or even the come along hitch too, at the same time, it's amazing the communication value and the control that you have over that 1,000 pounds. It's really a lot of fun. Well, I'm glad that was a useful tool for you. And since you've used them over the years, you've seen them used in all kinds of ways. So how did you used to do it?
Put a rope on, drill a hole in the end of an axe handle and tie a rope to it, make the loop, and then twist it around their lip. And it was a battle from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, and they called it a twister too, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. You hoped you survived it and the axe handle didn't hit you.
Yeah. Well, that's also one of the things that you and I can say, that through all of our clinics that we did, nobody got hurt, you know?
No.
And that's really important. You know, I'm very safety oriented, and I know on your ranch, when you have people come over, that you're looking at their safety. You want to teach them safety, because so many people kind of have the Mary Poppins idea: put a little sugar on it, it'll be good. But you know, the thing about you've cowboyed and you've hunted and farmed and stuff, and you know what it's like to be hurt. So folks, when you go to see Ron and you go to see his ranch and you go to working around those animals, and you're going to, one of the first things he's going to teach you is how to be safe around these animals. And the other thing, folks, I want to give you a little bit of farmer or rancher etiquette, is you never ask a cowboy, rancher, farmer, how many cows he's got. You're asking how much money he's got in his wallet. How many acres have you got? You're asking how much money has he got in the bank, you know? So you never ask that. It's okay to say, have you got mules and horses there and cattle? Yep. But that rancher is never going to say, I've got 10, 15, or 10,000. It's not going to happen. So there's a little etiquette for you when it comes to mules and donkeys. So when it comes to shoeing and trimming and this sort of thing, you've probably done a lot of that over the years.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure have. Do a lot of it myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
As I'm getting older, I do the 1 hoof a day program, though.
Yeah. We learned a lot about contracted heels and this sort of thing this time, huh?
Yes, we did. It was very, very nice. We definitely have some animals that do have contracted heels, and you know, it contributes to a lot of issues, including thrush at times too. So it's really good to get that hoof spread out just a little bit, and twisting the shoe was just beveling it just slightly was really a good way to do it. And you've taught me that these last few years, and I've been practicing it, and it does work.
Yeah, it's important. If you got no wheels, you got no car.
Yep, that's right. Yep,
Yeah.
and that donkey hoof just goes right on in a lot of them mules, and the only way you can do it is correct it the best you can.
Yep, that's right.
So,
Now, do you have any other cowboys there or cowgirls helping you out on the ranch?
just the wife right now. That's
Yeah.
it. We don't. Our kids are coming to visit, and the guest ranch is getting booked up, and so I don't. I'm a one man army right now.
Okay, that's
So
one thing. Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to point out to you folks, is that when you go to his place, and not only are you going to be awed by the beauty, but it's going to be one-on-one. I mean, you're going to learn the real thing, you know. And this guy can cook. He Dutch oven cooking, smoking, and this sort of thing. It's just absolutely out of this world.
I wanted to jump in and ask you, Ron, what type of a nutrition program do you have going on for your animals? How are you managing that? What have you found as far as the amount of feed? What feed has wound up working well for you? And how have you gone about putting that feed and nutrition program? That's something that a lot of folks ask, is they want to know about feed and nutrition. So what have you been finding successful and has worked well for you?
in different areas, you have different situations. Right now, a lot of our hay, our forage in this area, isn't very good quality. Um, we try to find the best grass hay we can get. I try to stay away from very much alfalfa. I just don't like the result I get from it. And I also supplement. We have a product here called a packer pellet. It's basically a supplemental pellet, and that's what I do with mine. I've heard wherever you're at. I mean, Steve talks about an all pellet diet, and I've seen it with in the past, and it works great. Unfortunately, here pellets are so expensive. I have to use more hay and less pellets. It's just a financial thing, but I would prefer if you want very little waste, that's the way to go. However, that's my nutritional supplement. We have a real variety of weather here. In the winter, it can get quite cold. Then I do have to increase the carbohydrate intake a little bit for them to stay warmer. I don't like to baby my mules too much. I don't put them in stalls at night and all that. I kind of like them to be a little bit on the tough side, and I like them to have those outdoor experiences, so they're easier to work with up in the mountains. So uh, that is my program I do. It's not perfect. It's not the best, but it's just basically hay with supplements, be it grain, primarily pellets, and of course you have to have good quality salts and things like that too.
And the thing is, too, is Ron knows, just like any other farmer, is that it doesn't hurt to test your hay to kind of get an idea of what's actually in it. Like you heard him say, supplements, because not all the hays are going to meet every need of these mules and donkeys. And when you're feeding them, especially you get there during the winter, it's 20 degrees below zero. They need those carbohydrates. They need to be standing on top of a hay bale the whole time, especially when you got as many animals as he's got. It's pretty tough, and he's only had this place for what, 5 years now, Ron?
4 years.
Yeah. So I mean, he's still building. He's still putting programs together. Still got some work on his barns and corrals, things that he's going to be doing. So the thing about it is, you do have good gentle animals to be around, and that's really important.
What have you found as far as stalls and quarters? We talk a lot about keeping them separate, and some folks that's a possibility. Some folks they don't have the quarters to keep them separate. What have you found works well for you, for your animals? How does that work out? Do you find that you have to work them every single day, or can you let some days go in between? I'm just curious what that looks like for you on a working ranch.
Unless you're really working hard, I would prefer not to work them hard every day. Maybe 3-4 days a week would be about it. And if you're training, it's all about less is more. You don't want to spend 5 hours training 3 or 4 days a week. I don't think you are going to get overwhelmed, and your animal will be too. What I like to do is get them off into smaller groups, or if you can't do that, I like to mix them and put just one or two in a pasture by themselves. I don't like to have the whole herd together all the time. Unfortunately, we had an issue where I had to put them all back together. But when I'm working with them, I don't want them all running together. I want them off in a small corral by themselves. I got some small round pens, and that's what I keep them in. I find that they're more responsive, easier to train. They're not worried about who's going to fight who to do what, or who's going to bully who. You can just go right work with them, and they just learn quicker. So that's my experience. I mean, in the winter, I'll push them all together. It's just simply it's a water situation, a feed situation, and they can go off and be mules for a while.
Yeah.
My problem with it is I got something called elk here, and elk love to eat my hay. And so I just keep them all in one corral where the elk have to struggle a little harder to hop in there and eat the hay.
One of the things you mentioned, which I remember early on talking with Steve, and he would tell me, hey, folks, you don't need to be going out there training 4 or 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. Maybe 6 hours a week total, 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there. And to me, not really knowing anything, that's I was like, man, I feel like you got to get out there and you really got to work it. Like when I was training, when I was young, basketball, you got to get out there, you got to train, you got to practice, you got to work on, and you got to do drills, and you got to do training, and you got to do it every day. And then football, I never played football, but I had friends who did, and every single day they were going to school hour and a half, 2 hours early to train. And so when Steve says 30 minutes a day, maybe 4 to 6 hours a week, that was a shocker for me. Was that something that was just normal knowledge to you, or did you learn that over time? How did you come to that? Hey, you don't want to overtrain them and overwork them.
If you're ranching for a living, it's finding any time to train at all on anything is fortunate. But yes, I see that and this 30, 60, 90-day thing, and people pushing the trainer to get all this done, and I only got money for 30 days or something like that. And that just instills this forcing it on the animal when it isn't ready. And what I've learned is go slow, be steady, be predictable, so that they know what to expect out of you, and you can expect something back in return. And I've had much better success taking my time. That right, 3, 5, 6, 8 hours a week, maybe at the most. And I think you gain more by doing less. This pound them, pound them, pound them, pound them. After a while, you start noticing a little rebellion in there, and it's basically just mental overload. I feel they can't handle it. They got to be a mule once in a while too, and so that's been my experience.
Out where you're at, I would imagine that you're not really close to veterinarian, not really close to maybe some animal health professionals, farriers, etc. For someone who finds themselves either in a situation where they're far away, and so getting someone to come out and doctor on their animal is a challenge, or you know, may want to learn to do it themselves. I reckon you've had to learn to do it yourself. What's some insight that you could provide, or just from your experience, to encourage them and say, well, this is how it worked for me? Because that's one thing that I think intimidates a lot of people, is the idea of doing their own shoeing, whether it's corrective or otherwise, is doing their own, medication and shots or ointments or whatever the case might be. What's some insight that you'd give those folks, because that's the reality you live in?
Yeah, the reality is, my veterinarian has to drive 2.5 hours to get here. I talk to your veterinarians. I am no veterinarian, don't claim to be, and really don't want to be. And the truth of the matter is, I have a pretty broad first aid kit for my animals. It was designed by a veterinary friend of mine, and I have that on hand at all times. Basically, it's even got a few antibiotics and things like that. And I really strongly recommend talking to your veterinarian about it. As far as hoof care goes, when you have your farrier there, or maybe you want to learn how to do it yourself, everybody should be able to put a shoe back on if you lose a shoe. That's my opinion. You don't have to be an expert, but you do have to be able to get by. Some people carry boots and things like that if they throw a shoe, but it's just not the same. By doing some of it, at least some of it, yourself, you start understanding that hoof, and you start understanding some of the problems that come in with improper or no hoof care, and some of the issues and from feed. A lot of it has to do with feed. I had a thrush incident this spring that Steve was more than happy to pick on me about, and I had it coming. But you start learning these things, and you start learning the parts of the foot and what good should be. You need to learn what good is. And the only way to do that is you got to get your hands dirty.
Yep.
And that's what I highly recommend. You got to learn your hoof angles, what a white line is, the sole, how much sole is good, and what how much you take off, things like that. And there's a lot of farriers that'll help you. There's a lot of information. Steve has a lot of good information on it, and I just highly encourage you, even if you never do it again, have someone teach you how to drive a couple nails in a horseshoe. It's just really important when you're on the trail, somewhere where you don't have help, you can get by, and that's what it's about.
So you got that working ranch there. Do you wind up getting a chance to ride very often?
Me or people?
You.
I just had a gentleman here from Alaska for 2 weeks and teaching. He wanted to learn packing. And I said, to be a good packer, you got to learn how to ride first. And that was 2 intense weeks of riding and packing. My arthritis hurt in spots that never even hurt before after we were done. And we become really good friends over this now. And I spoke highly of, you need to really participate in some of these mule clinics we're doing. And I know he'll be here. So, but it was great. Yes, I do take people out on trail rides if I can, weather provided. And I enjoy it very much. I like working cattle with my mule. I really enjoy doing it. Ranching with the mules is a lot of fun. And things are changing there too. And I'm one of the few that'll go do it anymore. Most of them are four-wheelers and motorcycles and side-by-sides. So if you're going to go work cows, you better get your mule used to a four-wheeler coming roaring up behind you and hitting the brakes real fast, because it's going to happen.
Except for on his outfit. He won't have one of them four-wheelers around his outfit.
Nope, I won't.
I want to tell you.
You want to go see the ranch, you got to get on the saddle.
There you go. I'll tell you, it was a few years ago. Steve and I Steve and Susan were down there, and I took my family to the Andrada Ranch. Steve talks about it down there with Randy. And my boys, this was 2019, I think. So my boys were 4 years younger. Well, at that time, the oldest was 7 years old. Then the next oldest was 5. And then the youngest, he was 3 years old. And so the first day we did all filming. And we filmed the mule saddle training course, mastering the saddle. We did some other supplemental videos, but the second day was when we got to kind of recreation and ride more. Well, the littlest one, he didn't want to get on the mule. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. But then he saw me, and he saw the 5-year-old and the 7-year-old get on, and I'll tell you what, that riding looked like the best thing in the world to him. Because if you took a look over where he was sitting with the ladies, he was grabbing a helmet, putting it on his head, 2 years old, trying to buckle it up underneath here. I said, I think we better get Stevie on this horse. Well, Steve, do you remember? He did not want to get off that mule. He did not want to get down off that mule. He wanted to stay there. He was interested, and he loved it.
Yep. Yeah, that was pretty cool. You couldn't pull him off of that mule. He wanted to stay. He really enjoyed it. But at first, nothing to do with it,
Wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah. So, so on your outfit, Ron, you don't mind having kids and families and this sort of thing there, huh?
Oh no, not at all. We're kind of set up for it here. We have round pen. We have a small arena. I have a little trail course, things like that, right by the guest ranch facility. So we don't have to go out on the trails on this big super adventure if you don't want to go. But we can do experiences without really having to travel too far. It just makes it a lot easier to keep an eye on everybody that way. I got some pretty tough country here to go riding in, and I wouldn't want to take a beginner in there. They would probably never go again. So uh, that that's been my experience. We can cater to people. We got a facility to have people bring their animals here to use themselves or learn some training tips also. And so yeah, I try to keep it all close by. And then if I think they're ready, then we go hit the trails because it's pretty wild up in there.
Yeah, and then you can have it where you've got corrals where people can come and bring their mules as well and learn from you, and then go up in the mountains as well on trail rides.
Correct. Yes, we do. And we have trails and roads and things like that all over on the ranch here. And then if someone's really ambitious and wants to put on some miles, they can go hit the Forest Service roads and end up in Idaho somewhere
Yeah,
if they're lucky.
yeah. So
But
and then folks, he doesn't have RV spots, but it's all camping without running water and electricity and this sort of thing. But he does have a cabin. He's got tents that are set up. He's got what he's called a glamping tent. It's really interesting, and he's got a cook tent with. I mean, this cook tent. I think we had probably about 35 people inside this cook tent, nice wood floors and tables and this sort of thing. Or if you really don't want to experience the tent, you can experience the cabin. And I mean, he's got a cabin that he built that's really nice. He took it from one part of the ranch and dragged it cross country and then put it in another place. And it's really a really nice place to stay. So it's, what do you think, Dave? We got some more things we want to discuss?
Yeah, well, I did have another question. I was curious. You had said, if you get any time to train on a working ranch, you're lucky. With all of the livestock that you have, all of the different responsibilities, one of the questions that will come up, and it has to do with both health and nutrition, but is just monitoring the individual animals, supplements, medications, vaccines, like a vaccine program, and even like deworming. Do you have a regimen or a way that you keep track of that? Is it just kind of by you? Are you eyeballing it, or is there a stretch of time through the year where you kind of get to each one? I'm curious about that.
I generally with wormer, I try to worm if I don't feel as though they're being impacted heavily by an environment like mine are pretty isolated here. I'll worm twice a year and follow up in approximately a month. I follow up with a second treatment, and that's really important because you have eggs. Okay, you kill the adults and the larvae, but those eggs are still there, and you have to do that second treatment, that follow up. Biggest thing is follow the directions. They're there for a reason. There's so many different types of wormer, and I do like to mix it up. I don't just use one. Ivermectin is so overused
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to spend the money and mix your wormers up. That's one of the most important pieces of advice I can give you. They all are a good product if you know what you're going after. So that's kind of been my worming program most times is twice a year, and now we have some new types of wormers, and I'm not going to plug the brands, but I use them, and they have a little bit of a carryover. And what's nice about that is if you don't get back to treat them right away with a second follow up, it's already got some residual in the animal. So as far as that goes, that's been my plan. Whenever you get strange animals from all over different parts of the country, you have a potential of introducing them to some new worm, disease, whatever it may be. Biggest thing I recommend with vaccinations is talk to your veterinarian, or vet tech or whoever you can. That's the best way to do it. I mean, you can spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on vaccine, which you may not have to do, simply because one of them right now, one of the big debates is rabies, and here in the state of Montana last year there was a rabies outbreak. Do you vaccinate for that? A lot of it is you have to make a choice. If you're in rattlesnake country, are you going to vaccinate for that or not? And those are things you need to talk to your veterinarian. Steve's got a lot better advice for it than I do. But, sometimes finances dictate what you do. And get the best bang for your buck. That's what I'm going to tell you. One of the things I'm going to say is, you also have to determine, are you dry lotting your stock or are they out on pasture? And a lot of experience I've had with pasture is you better know your pasture very well. A lot of times it's a mistake just kicking them out and forgetting about them. You're going to have nothing but hoof care problems. You're going to have fatty pockets where there shouldn't be fatty pockets. Feel the crest of their neck and in on their backs, and all of a sudden you're going to get these big bulges starting to show up. Well, maybe you need to do something different with your pastures. And Steve is a much better information than I. However, you really have to monitor that close because these animals are efficient. A donkey is made to eat anything that'll stick you and stab you and get fat in a gravel pit, they say. And it goes into your mule too. So keep that in mind.
I was going to ask you, we've talked a little bit about care for the animals. I think the last thing I want to ask is about, I would imagine you've got tack. You've talked about having some saddles. We talk a lot about leather and just the upkeep that leather requires, oiling and whatnot. In the volumes that, maybe you're talking about in the little windows of time that you have, any insight into upkeep of tack and equipment and leathering and just making sure that your tack is ready to go and your saddles are in good working shape? I'm interested.
Well, Steve and I will go around circles on this. Steve loves beta, and I'm still a traditionalist. I like leather. But the problem with leather today is our leather quality isn't there like it used to be. We don't have the leather manufacturers. We don't have the people that really are getting good quality stuff in. Well, Steve's saddles, a lot of them are leather, and they're good saddles. Now, I don't know where they're getting it from, but they're doing a good job. But my experience is if you don't want to clean it, then go with your synthetic products. You have to oil those saddles. You got to take care of them. If you got leather, I love the feel of leather, unless it's raining out and it's really soaking wet. Then I don't like the feel of leather because you got a wet butt all the time. But with that being said, if you don't want to take care of your leather, or if you feel as though you can't lift this heavy leather equipment, basically a leather saddle is going to weigh up pretty heavy. Then you better start looking at the synthetic products. As far as like the harness, I love the beta on harness. Anything that I'm using a lot, like Steve's martingale, beta is the way to go. It's just so much tougher, durable. It stays soft and supple. Biothane has its place also. It's a little stronger, a little tougher, stiffer in a lot of cases, but there's a place for both of it. But it's a personal choice.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, Ron. I really appreciate you taking time. I know Steve. I was just telling or thinking to myself, we just about got through this entire recording without any technical difficulties, and wouldn't you know it, right here at the last second, Steve's internet goes out. He just sent me a text message, says, "Dave, it looks like I lost the internet, and I'm not going to get it back." So I just want to say thank you so much for taking time. Really interesting hearing your story, hearing a little bit about what it's like day in and day out. Any final thoughts or anything else you'd like to share?
Well, my final thought is I encourage those who have their animals, get out and use them. They're not just pasture pets. Get to know them, get to learn them. You'll only get better the more you use them and the more you understand them. And enjoy. It's a real blessing. It's great to know Steve. We've been friends for quite some time, and it's a privilege being on the podcast. And you're a great host, Dave. And I look forward to anyone wanting to stay at the ranch. We'll certainly be happy to accommodate. My daughter runs Facebook, Mules Roost Ranch. Check it out.
That's great. We'll put a link in the description so folks can find you. Yeah, this was great. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us today. We know you could be doing a lot of different things with your time. The fact that you're here hanging out with Steve, Ron, and I really does mean a lot to us. I hope that this has helped make your day better. I hope that this has really been worth your time. And like I said at the very beginning, if you've asked any questions throughout the broadcast, I'm going to go back through, and the next live program we have, we'll get those in front of Steve. But thanks again, everyone. Take care. God bless, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.